We are on the record for hearings in the matters listed in the North Dakota Industrial Commission hearing docket for Thursday, May 26, 2022. I am Stephen Nelson, hearing examiner for these hearings. We are at the hearing room for the Department of Mineral Resources, Oil and Gas Division, and it is 9 a.m. On the docket, the following matters will be continued or dismissed. Page 1, case number 29364 is continued to June. Case number 29313 is continued to June. Case number 29314 is continued to June. Case number 29365 is continued to June. Case number 29367 is continued to June. Page 4, case number 29370 is continued to June. Case number 29371 is dismissed. On page 5, case number 29372 is dismissed. Case number 29373 will be dismissed. Case number 29310 is continued to June. Case number 29312 is dismissed. On page 6, case number 29319 is dismissed. Case number 29320 is continued to June. Case number 29329 is continued to June. Case number 29330 is continued to June. Page 8, case number 29380 is continued to June. Page 9, case number 29382 is continued to June. Case number 29383 is continued to June. Case number 29384 is continued to June. Case number 29385 is continued to June. Case number 29386 is continued to June. Case number 29388 is continued to June. And on the supplemental docket, case number 29401 is continued to June. Case number 29402 is continued to June. The administrative docket starts on page 6 with case number 29328 and goes through case number 29399 and includes the docket supplement with cases numbers 29400 through 29402. These cases will be heard in the next room with Michael Zisch. Audio recordings of the cases on the administrative docket will be placed on the oil and gas website by the end of the week. If you wish to appear in one of the matters on the administrative docket, please appear in the next room. If there is opposition to the matter, it will be brought back into this hearing room to be heard, and your statements and evidence will be taken. We will begin with case number 29361 on a motion of the Commission to review the authorization and permit under order number 30790 for KT Enterprises LLC to operate a treating plant located in the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 22, Township 150 North, Range 96 West, McKenzie County, North Dakota, known as the KT Enterprises number 34-22 TP, and such other relief as is appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this matter, case number 29361 on behalf of KT Enterprises LLC. We intend to call one witness in this matter, Mr. Keith Norbeck, who's present with us in the hearing room.
Mr. Norbeck, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Keith, state your full name for the record, please.
Keith Norbeck,
And Keith, by whom are you employed?
KT Enterprises.
In what capacity?
I'm the vice president of the company.
Okay. And you're an engineer, is that correct?
Yes.
And you've testified before the commission previously?
Yes.
And you've had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
Yes.
For the further testimony, this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Okay, Keith, let's turn to the packet of exhibits that we've distributed to the commission staff. And I guess I don't have this marked, but we'll just mark it as we go along here. Sure. The first page in the packet, that's basically a table of contents, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, let's go to the next page, which we'll have marked as Exhibit 1. Can you tell me what Exhibit 1 is, and then briefly describe what's contained on that exhibit?
Exhibit 1 is just kind of a summary of everything that we've done with the treating plant since commissioning. One thing that I would like to add to this is that just on the timeline of expansions over the last 12 months is that we actually commissioned the facility in April of 2021, right at the end of the month. And so that's when we finally started processing slurry and injecting it down the well. This treating plant is a treating plant that is there specifically to support a slurry fracture injection operation. Just for clarity, it's not similar to the other treating plants that are out in the basin. So it was for the well. So April 2021 is when we commissioned the facility. We've completed 2 expansions in the meantime to the facility. We added 2 400-barrel tanks in roughly December to the facility to manage H2S scavenger that we were receiving, and offer some more storage for injecting those fluids down the well. And then we started working on a pre-grind system, which is going to be in two subsequent exhibits. And as of today, we should be commissioning that facility finally. So it's been a long time coming. And then just kind of a quick summary of other things that we've added to the site that currently exist out there, which we'll reference in a later exhibit as well. The second point on there is just where our current bond amount is for the facility. We're currently set at $525,000 based off of the addition of the pre-grind system and the H2S scavenger tanks. And then the final thing is that we currently don't have anything identified for future expansion over the next 12 months. We basically need to get through the pre-grind system and make sure we're pointed in the right direction with what we've done there. There may be some changes once it's operating.
Okay, then let's go to the next page in the packet, and we'll have that marked as Exhibit 2. As you did with the previous exhibit, Keith, I'm going to have you identify it first, and then there's a lot of information on here, so I don't expect you to go through everything. Why don't you just basically highlight the more important aspects of this exhibit?
Yeah. So this here is an as-built. This exhibit is an as-built of the facility that we completed in April of 2021. So when we first did our initial injections, this was what we had as a plan, and I believe it's fairly accurate to what we have submitted previously when we did the original hearing. The only thing that changed was minor amount of storage. I don't really have a ton other to say about it other than that.
And there is a legend that if anybody has specific questions as to how to identify, that's off to the bottom left, is that correct?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
What is the shaded area? I don't think that's indicated on the legend. Can you tell us what that is?
Okay, yeah, that is just the cut and fill, is how the cut and fill when the facility was built, and so the grade of the site where we were putting in fill dirt versus it was cutting the dirt away. So, and I guess also just to highlight the legend real quick, the top legend has device names, and so that it says device, but that is related to the monitoring and controls program that we have for looking at geomechanics, and so it identifies where transmitters are, different things like that. The table down below itemizes out what is related to the treating plant specifically. So you can see that, column 1 says the number, and then facility, this is the actual treating plant and what the tanks are. And then down below, after there's a little gap, it says saltwater disposal battery, and so that would be very typical of what's on a saltwater disposal.
All right, then let's go to the next page in the packet, and we'll have that marked as Exhibit 3. As you previously did, identify and briefly highlight what's contained upon it.
So this here is another as-built of the facility, and this is actually trued up to today of everything that is out on site. And we've illuminated everything in red that has changed from the previous as-built that happened in April 2021 to this as-built in 2022. And so to try to dive into what that actually is we've added, so item number 23, we have a lab and storage area. What we do there is rheological study basically on the slurry. Before we inject it, we just double check those parameters, and so it's an area where they can go to that. We add an operator's office. This is just basically for crew ability to change out and do what they do on site. And then item 25 is where we actually place the two 400-barrel scavenger tanks, and you can see that in the center of the containment. Item 27 through 30 in the legend is the actual pre-grind system that we're commissioning today. And so that consists of basically a flat tank, an additional shaker, a hammer mill, and a jaw crusher and an auger system to convey the solids. And so the intention of that system was to be able to process solids that did not flow freely and were building up on our pad in a more expedited fashion.
All right, then the next page in the exhibit, let's mark that as Exhibit number 4. Can you identify and briefly discuss that?
Yep, this is just a summary of the volumes that have went through the treating plant. from a very high level. And so what we're looking at, it's a table that identifies, what the slurry injected is. And so this is literally viscified slurry that has went down the well that would have been weighted up with solids. And so year totals, I have basically month by month, and then a 1-year summary total of the previous 12 months. And so it works out to be pretty perfect for that. So we've injected through March of 2022, 132,000 barrels of slurry. The amount of water that we injected, that just is be comparable to produced water out in the basin, but it's 639,000 barrels of produced water, or flowback, that would be, for a total injected volume of 772,000. And then I have a table that just summarizes right below some additional information that follows the same month by month basis, but is the injected solids. So this is literally like raw solids in barrels. And so like the 11,813 barrels would be 11,813 barrels of physical solids that were mixed into the slurry. So when you look at the average slurry percent solids, it's 9%, and that's basically 11,813 divided by the 132,000 barrels of slurry injected. So average going down hole, we've been injecting about 9%. And then last thing that I added to this table, just for your information, is this unprocessable debris. And this is made up of mostly like granite boulders, rags, or various metals, could be a bolt. And most recently we got quite a bit of fibrous lost circulation material from a drilling rig, which is why the number went up. But this is all the material that left the site since we began operating. So 42 yards, which is approximately a truckload in a year. So.
Okay, Mr. Examiner, that concludes our presentation with respect to the Commission's docketed item that we review the authorization of the permit. We would offer the exhibits and stand for any questions.
Exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Keith, the 42 yards that was trucked, I assume that was trucked off-site? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
42 yards. Yes.
Did that go to like a special waste landfill, or where did that go?
It went to, so we're currently loading it into like T-norm type bins, because of the way that we manage waste on the pad, sometimes it becomes impacted. And so we're using a hauler, specifically it's Owl Logistics. And so it either goes to, a landfill out of state and goes through that whole process, so.
And does KT currently have a radiation license from the Department of Environmental Quality?
We do, yes.
Have you encountered high levels of T-norm, or?
The answer is yes, we have, but nothing, and I don't have an RSO here to comment on what those impact levels would be. The men have to wear dosimeters on site, and the amount of background radiation that they've received has been negligible, even with what we've been processing on site. And so there's been no issue related to like health or safety through that program. We have seen, varying, I would say if you could draw a distribution of the loads that we receive, is that the majority of the loads are not very T-norm impacted. It's relatively benign. And, but there are occurrences where that it can come back fairly hot. And our management of that has, or highly radioactive, I guess, but we manage it quickly, just pump it down the well. But even at those higher levels, it's still very benign comparatively to other industries that manage this type of stuff. So.
Okay, thank you.
Keith, how are you loading the material into that like pre-grind area, like over the shaker and mill?
Yeah, on I think we call that page 3. So just referencing back to that page. So that as built, what we are using is so what happens is a hydrovac will dump on the pad, the solids, the liquids will run down into our sump, and the solids stay there. We load them up with a skid steer, and we're actually dumping them into a hopper that is above item number 30 on the list, which is called a jaw crusher. And so it flows through the hopper, down into the jaw crusher, breaks up any oversized particles to be augured into the system.
And then it augers over to what's 20,
It augers up
over to the shaker and the hammer mill.
up to number 29, the hammer mill first. Yep.
Okay. And then anything that comes off the shaker, where is that? Is it falling back into that pad then?
No, anything that comes off the shaker actually goes right down into the pit, and then like the pre-grind tank, I should say, the pre-grind tank, and then we basically just run it through the grinding process that's in the rest of the facility. It would go back through the ball mill, and it's just loaded up with the fluids.
Oh, all right, thanks.
Keith, on your exhibit 4, how many barrels of solids is generated by the average horizontal well?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. Are you asking about like drill cuttings that would be generated? Honestly, I haven't done the math lately. So everything that we're taking in has been tank bottoms, like frac flowback, things of that nature that's coming from the production process. We do take in some drilling muds off of the rigs when they get cross-contamination or things like that. But we, to date, haven't ventured into taking drill cuttings off of a well. So I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm sure we can calculate it, but I could get back to you.
I thought that was one of the main reasons for setting this up initially, but maybe I'm mixing it up with a different one that we had.
I know people have looked at it in the past, and it's definitely, we permitted it as an acceptable waste. But right now, the cost of putting cuttings into a landfill is fairly economic. And we, like I've kind of highlighted, we're working on trying to figure out ways to improve processability of just physical solids that'll sit on the pad. And so we need to see some throughput increases, and it's definitely something that can be done, and I think we've technologically proved that we could take in drill cuttings. It's just, it'd be more of an economic consideration in the industry.
Okay, so it's possible for you to grind it and inject it, it's a better home for it in the landfill right now.
It's a more economic home today.
And if you look at the volume of solids injected, they tend to be rising quite substantially. Is that because your process is getting better, or you're getting more clients, or what is it? What's causing that to increase?
That's a great question. So when we started this process, like the oil industry, like vets out heavily what where they're sending their waste, and so it took quite a while to get approvals and customer acquisition to work through that. And at this point here, I believe we're probably approved by 95% of the operators out in the basin. So that was one consideration on why the volumes have been steadily increasing, is getting more customers. The second reason is logistics in getting people used to traveling to a new facility. And so old habits kind of die hard. It was always easy to just drive over here, and now all of a sudden we're driving over here. And so getting people used to driving to a different place has been increasing that. And so it's honestly mostly just customer volume driven. It wasn't capacity or technology. I do think that the pre-grind system is going to increase. So like what I felt like our ability to process solids in a day was some number, and we should be able to substantially increase what we're able to take, but the numbers that we're receiving are still below what our processing ability is.
Okay, thank you. Oh, the other thing is, have you had any problems with plugging or any issues with overpressure?
No, we have not. We're doing an annual report. The annual report this month, we're working on it, and kind of a look back in updating the geomechanical model. But to date, we haven't had any issues. And honestly, when I look at the pump, each individual pumping operation, it's very consistent. It's a lot more consistent than what I thought it would be. And so As long as we don't have anything unusual happen, which we actually haven't in an injection operation, the solids goes down and it looks pretty much the same every time, so.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Anything further, Mr. Bender?
Nothing further, thank you.
That will conclude the hearing in case number 29361. Moving on. Case number 29362. Application of Grayson Mill Operating LLC for an order amending the field rules for the Stony Creek and/or Bakken Pool, Williams County, ND, so as to create and establish an overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit comprised of Section 36, Township 155 North, Range 100 West, and Sections 1 and 12, Township 154 North, Range 100 West, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on said proposed overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit and/or such further relief. Would all interested parties please come forward?
Morning, Mr. Examiner. Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in case 29362 on behalf of Grayson Mill Operating LLC. We intend to call, I guess, 4 witnesses in this matter. Ms. Amy Becker will be offering some land testimony. Mr. Mark, and I apologize on the pronunciation, we may have to ask him so that you don't mispronounce it. I believe it's Washaleski, Washuleski. Just a moment, please. And then we'll have a drilling supervisor, Mr. Daniel Chang, and then also a reservoir engineer, Evan Luke, Mr. Evan Luke. And I believe they should be on the phone now. Amy, are you there? Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Oh,
So what we've done so far, Amy, is I've indicated who the witnesses will be, and you're going to be my first witness, so I would guess the hearing officer is going to swear you in, and we'll be going from there.
okay.
That is correct. Ms. Becker, do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Amy, would you state your full name for the record, please?
Amy Becker,
And Amy, by whom are you employed?
Grayson Mill
And
Energy.
in what capacity?
I am a senior landman.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously?
I have.
And have you had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
Yes.
For the further testimony, this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Amy, let's turn to the packet of exhibits for case number 29362, and we'll skip the cover page and go to page, or the exhibit marked L1. Can you identify L1 for us, please, and then briefly discuss what's contained upon that exhibit?
Yes, L1 is displaying our proposed 1920 acre spacing unit comprised of sections 12, 13, and 24 in Township 154 North, Range 102 West.
Sorry, what?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading it from the wrong one. I'm ahead of us. I apologize.
We all want to get done quickly, but
Okay, so Exhibit L1, now that I have the correct one in front of me, is also a proposed 1920 acre spacing unit comprised of Section 36 in Township 155 North, Range 100 West, and also Sections 1 and 12 located in Township 154 North, Range 100 West.
okay, and then let's go to L2.
L2 shows Grayson Mills operated state BSU, which contains 1280 acres, comprised of Section 36, Township 155 North, Range 100 West, and also Section 1, Township 154 North, Range 100 West. Also shown is Grayson Mills' working interest, which is 69.48%.
Okay, and then L3.
L3 is showing another Grayson Mill operated DSU, the Rose, which is comprised of 1280 acres, located in sections 12 and 13, Township 154 North, Range 100 West. And as you can see, Grayson Mill's working interest is 83.82% within that DSU.
And then Exhibit L4.
L4 again is showing the proposed 1920 acre spacing unit, which will contain section 36 in Township 155 North, Range 100 West, and also sections 1 and 12, Township 154 North, Range 100 West. And in that proposed 1920 acre spacing unit, Grayson Mill would have an estimated working interest of 74.26%.
No further questions of the land witness.
Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to your next witness. And
Yeah, Mark, can you state your full name first so that we get the pronunciation correctly?
Yes, it's Mark Washaleski.
I was close.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Washaleski. 1 second here. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Mark, would you state your full name again for the record and spell your last name?
Yes, Mark Washaleski. Last name is Washulleski.
And Mark, by whom are you employed?
Grayson Mill Energy.
And in what capacity?
I'm an operations geologist.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously?
Yes, I have.
And you've had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
Yes,
No, offer the further testimony of this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Mark, let's go to the next exhibit in the packet, G1. Can you tell us what G1 is?
sure. So G1 is a structure map on the Upper Bakken Shale over the proposed section. And in yellow there it's highlighted is the correlation log of the POC state 2336. Contour lines are 25 feet. That's about all on that.
Okay, and then G2?
G2 is that correlation log and just has gamma and resistivity, and the thickness is there. Middle Bakken is about 44 feet thick, and that's the only thing we'll be targeting, no 3/4 wells.
No further questions of the geologic witness.
Are there any questions from commission staff?
Mark, is there any reason Grayson Mill is only targeting the Middle Bakken in the area? Or is it just this one well is only a Middle Bakken target?
I think the engineering witness would probably be better prepared to respond to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just a second, Evan, just a second. You'll have an opportunity when we call you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on. Was it Mr. Chang?
Actually, I think I'll be calling Evan Luke first.
Mr. Luke, do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Evan, will you state your full name for the record, please?
Yes, sir. Evan Luke,
And spell your last name.
Luke.
And Evan, by whom are you employed?
Grayson Mill Energy,
And in what capacity?
senior reservoir engineer.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously?
No, sir.
What I'd like you to do, Evan, is briefly highlight for the examiner and the commission staff your educational background and work experience.
Yes, sir. So graduated from Louisiana State University with a degree in civil engineering. Have a little over 7 years of experience in the industry, 1 year as a drilling engineer, and six years plus as a reservoir engineer across different basins in the U.S. and different capacities within reservoir engineering, including well performance, reserves, planning, field development, etc.
And how long have you been with Grayson Mill?
9 months?
Okay. And in preparation for today's hearing, have you made a thorough study and review of all the relevant engineering matters concerning this request?
Yes, sir, I have.
And have you prepared or had prepared under your control and supervision some exhibits you intend to sponsor?
Yes, sir.
Offer the further testimony of this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Evan, let's go to the next exhibit in the packet, E1. Can you tell us what E1 is?
Yeah, so E1 here is showing the 15,000 foot lateral middle Bakken well that we're targeting from section 36, section 1, and section 12 as shown below. The legend on the bottom left is showing bold colors are existing middle Bakken wells, solid lines for orange are existing Three Forks wells, and the dashed blue lines are the proposed middle Bakken well, with the 15K going from our state DSU into section 12 of the Rose DSU proposed there.
Okay, and can you just spend a moment or two discussing for us why Grayson Mill is proposing a 1920 in this area, given the fact that there are already two 1280s in place?
Yes, sir. So the original plan for the Rose DSU down below here was a single Three Forks well. That well does not meet our economic threshold, especially due to our development timing of that well. That well was originally planned to be drilled 2027, 2028, because it's as a single well, Three Forks, it didn't stack up in our development plan from economics. So when we saw the opportunity to capture and get through, get to this area sooner and pull the reserves out sooner and accelerate value by drilling it as a 15,000 foot lateral into section 12.
Okay, let's go on then to Exhibit E2, and I understand you're not a drilling engineer, but why don't you just briefly highlight what's contained on E2?
Yeah, so this is just the wellbore schematic here. I think the big takeaway is kind of looking at the estimated perf and plugs. There'll be 70 stages, which puts us around, I believe it's around 219-foot stage spacing. Planning to drill a 15,000-foot lateral in this area. Surface casing set around 2,200 feet. Intermediate Dakota casing around 6,500 feet. And then, like I said, the 15,000-foot lateral from that point.
Okay, and then Exhibit E3.
So in the reservoir characteristics, just kind of highlight a couple ones here. So the producing zone for this lateral will be Middle Bakken. As we mentioned, it's a 1920 development area of 15,000-foot lateral. TVD is about 10,750 feet with a bottom hole pressure gradient of 0.7 psi per foot. All the other parameters are pretty consistent with previous emissions, but net pay around 43 feet and water saturation around 31%.
And then Exhibit E4.
So Exhibit E4 on the well economics, I'll start in the top chart on the single economics. So this is a single well, but I'll start with the table at the top. So this is a reservoir of Middle Bakken. This will rate at around 2,000 barrels per day. Final rate on the oil is 2 barrels of oil per day. Decline rate of 81.6%. We're looking at an EUR oil here of 876,000 barrels with the estimated EUR from a BOE perspective of 1,435 MBOE. When we look at the economics, we run our economics here at $65 flat, $3 flat gas price, and that is pre-differential. So that is, the actual, the base price. CapEx of $9 million, operating cost about $20 million per well per month. We've run this at gross 100% working interest, 79% revenue interest. This yields us an NPV at 10% discount of $12.8 million and a 72% rate of return and a payout of 2.7 years.
And then Exhibit GM1, that's a gas capture affidavit that the commission typically requires in these sorts of matters. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in your opinion, will the requested relief prevent waste, protect relative rights, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes.
Mr. Examiner, no further questions. We'd offer the exhibits.
Exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Evan, is there any plan to pick up the remainder of 13 in any way?
So not from a sorry about that, got the feedback there. Not from a drilling standpoint, but what we'll do is we are planning to refrac the offset Rose well. And so our plan is as we refrac those wells, the two Middle Bakken wells, the east and west of that 15K, we will kind of design and tailor our completion from the toes of the Rose well to basically the section 12. We'll increase our loading and tailor our completions to where we're capturing those resources there that are not shown by the drilling rig. So we will capture them that way, but not through a new drill.
Is there a reason you're proposing this as a Middle Bakken target instead of a Three Forks target? Being as the offsets in 12 are both Middle Bakken and the existing well in 36 and 1 is also Middle Bakken.
So what we propose, even with access, having depletion points with Middle Bakken around you, calling these children wells with access depletions, the economics are still better on the Middle Bakken as a child exposed to depletion than they are at Three Forks. The other big piece of it too is in section 13, the take points of those Middle Bakken wells are, up section almost to the vertical, almost to where you've seen on the surface hole location. So there's a lot of open exposed Middle Bakken in the northern half of section 12 that, we could consider as virgin rock that has not been accessed, as these were small completions that were done on the Rose DSU. So that's another aspect of it as well. But as I mentioned, it's even exposed to depletion in this area, Middle Bakken wells are more economic than Three Forks.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Evan, this is Bruce Hicks. On your Exhibit E4, you're showing a gas-oil ratio of 2340. Is that due to the production method that you plan to use, or is it just naturally high in this area?
It's just higher in the area, and that aligns with what we've seen for representative wells in the area. It increases over time, so that's kind of just the average for life. When the well comes online early, a little bit lower than that, but kind of the life GOR lands around that 2340.
How do you intend to produce the wells?
It'll be ESP to rod pump.
And do you expect an increase in gas-oil ratio when you install an ESP?
There'll be some acceleration on gas. Where we expect to see the increased GOR is going to be out in time, right? That's kind of how we're forecasting it. So when wells are naturally flowing and that conversion to ESP is lower than it is in the long term, so we're kind of gradually building the GR over time in our economics.
And do you intend to drill all 4 of these wells on your Exhibit E1 in batch drill?
Yes, sir.
So when you bring on this huge volume, is the gas midstream operator going to be able to capture it all?
So we work through with our midstream team of providing them the forecast. Haven't heard anything of volume constraints off of this pad, so my interpretation is yes, but we do work with our midstream team, and they would be best to answer that. But we work with them, and they have raised any red flags to us about capture. Sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none? You had one more witness, correct?
Actually, Mr. Examiner, I misspoke initially. I talked about calling Mr. Chang as a witness, but he was more available in the event that there were some questions on drilling operations. And since there were no questions in that area, we do not intend to call him.
All right. Anything further in this matter, Mr. Bender? Or anything further in this matter at all?
Nothing further, thank you.
All right, that will conclude the hearing in case number 29362. Moving on. Case number 29363. Application of Grayson Mill Operating LLC for an order amending the field rules for the Todd Bakken Pool, Williams County, ND, so as to create and establish an overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit comprised of sections 12, 13, and 24, Township 154 North, Range 102 West, authorizing the drilling of a total not to exceed 6 wells, said proposed overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit, and or such further relief. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, appearing in this matter, case 29363, on behalf of Grayson Mill Operating LLC. We'll have the same 3 witnesses in this case as we had in the previous case, and once again, if there are any specific questions on drilling operations, Mr. Chang is available for questions. And we'd like to start with Ms. Becker.
Ms. Becker, do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Amy, let's go to Exhibit L1, identify and then briefly discuss what's contained upon it.
what you see on L1 is our proposed overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit made up of sections 12, 13, and 24 in Township 154 North, Range 102 West.
And L2.
L2 is just displaying the existing spacing unit that the proposed 1920 would overlap. There's an existing 640 located in section 12 and an existing 1280 located in section 13 and 24, both in 154 North, 102 West.
And L3.
L3 is showing the existing 640 acre spacing unit operated by Continental in section 12, 154 North, 102 West. Continental has an approximate working interest of 68.75%.
And L4.
L4 depicts Grayson Mills' existing 1280 acre spacing unit, the Dominic, located in section 13 and 24, 154 North, 102 West. And as you can see, Grayson Mill has a working interest in this CSU of 78.89%.
And then L5.
L5 is showing the proposed overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit in sections 12, 13, and 24, 154 North, 102 West. And the overlapping spacing unit gives Grayson Mill a working interest of 52.59%, leaving Continental with 22.92% working interest. And then you can see the others below.
No further questions.
Are there any questions from commission staff?
Amy, has Grayson Mill been in contact with Continental concerning this application?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none. Mr. Washwaleski, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Mark, let's go to G1.
Okay, G1 is a Upper Bakken Shale structure map over these sections with 25-foot contours, and the type log reference well is just to the south of these sections, the Clark 1.
And G2.
G2 is the log of the Clark 1 with gamma, and there's activity. The middle Bakken in this area is about 32 feet thick.
No further questions.
Any questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Mr. Luke, are you on the line?
Yes, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Evan, very briefly identify E1 and discuss what's contained upon it.
So E1 is showing section 12, 13, and 24 that Amy went through. Going to the legend on the bottom left, so solid blue line is existing Middle Bakken well, solid orange line are existing Three Forks well, and blue dashed lines here are the proposed Middle Bakken 15Ks going through these three sections. You can see in section 12, 13, and 24 there are existing Middle Bakken wells there, and the dashed lines are currently shown as 4 sticks, but depending on price environment could be downspaced to include 5 sticks, depending on price environment and acceptable depletion of the UR because of price. Yeah, it's shown as 4 wells, kind of offsetting of the existing wells and making sure that we're spaced out far enough away from the existing sticks.
Okay, and E2?
So yeah, so E2 is just showing the wellbore diagram. This is scheduled as a 3-string design, 15,000-foot lateral, surface casing set at 2,200 feet, intermediate 7-inch casing set at 11,500, and with the cemented liner going to TD at 26,500 feet MD. We're planning on doing 70 estimated stages. Plug and perf completion gives us around an average stage spacing of 214 feet for this well.
And E3?
So on the reservoir fluid parameters, start at the top. The producing zone, Middle Bakken, as we mentioned previously, development areas in 1920 or 15,000 foot lateral. TBD in this area is 10,650 feet with a bottom hole pressure gradient of 0.69 psi per foot. Similar parameters as previously shown, and water saturation here around 32%.
E4?
So this one, I'll start at the top with the single well economic table. Reservoirs, Middle Bakken. Initial rate here is 1,500 barrels of oil per day. Final rate of 2 barrels of oil per day. Our initial decline is 84.5%. GOR in this area is lower than previously shown. It's 1.8. EUR oil out this way is 556,000 barrels, and EUR from an MBOE standpoint is 838. I'll move to the bottom table now, where the gross economics for the entire DSU. I've shown it here as 5 wells, but with oil price $65, gas price flat at 3, capex of total for the DSU about $9 million per well, gets you around $45 million. Operating cost $20,000 per well per month. Gross economics also 100% working interest, 79% NRI. NPV of the entire DSU is coming in at $25.1 million with an initial an IRR rate of return of 56%, payout of 3.4 years.
And then GM1, is that a gas capture affidavit that the commission typically requires in these sorts of matters?
Yes.
In your opinion, will the requested relief prevent waste, protect relative rights, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes.
No further questions. Offer the exhibits.
Exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Evan, what would drive the decision to drill 5 wells versus 4?
So where we're coming from on that point is it comes down to our rate of return and net present value kind of in the current price environment. If you can downspace the wells and drain the reservoir more, if you accept maybe there'll be a 5 to 10% reduction in EUR, does it still generate more net present value, more revenue for the company? That's really what's driving the decision. It's doing that analysis of saying, we expect X amount of reduction in EUR at this price environment. Could we go to 5 wells here?
So do you need a higher oil price to drive that, or a lower oil price? What do you need?
So in this current environment, you would go to 5. You could probably be closer to around a $75 flat or $65 flat deck, depending on, we've got some midstream benefits that make it more economic for us as well. So it can be in a much lower price environment. You would still add the full bit stick.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Evan, this is Bruce. You have on Exhibit E1 4 wells. On your exhibit on economics, there's 5 wells, and in your application, you have 6 wells. Are you wanting us to approve 5 wells, or what do you want us to consider?
Yeah, I think ultimately,
Evan, let me just say one thing. I think the application is because there's already 2 wells there. I mean, there's that long 2-mile lateral, and then there's a single. So that's the reason for the request for.
But these are for 1,920 acre spacing in the application.
Okay, good point. Sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Evan. Can you answer the question?
no, so I think ultimately kind of how it's shown here is 4. Kind of in the current price environment, 5 is kind of why I put in the economics. I think there's even potential, if you look on the west side of it, you could add another stick on the west side because it's wider space than kind of in the area. So I think we would be in the ballpark of 5 at a minimum to be approved.
And what's the timing on this? When are you going to drill them?
So our plan is in 2024 is to spud.
So you're hoping for better prices then?
Well, I mean, the economics support lower prices as well. So we can still drill 5 wells and be economic at, $75 prices as well.
Okay.
So we've got some run room in this area, and, modern completions are showing that there's additional run room here at lower prices.
Okay, thank you.
I think given all
Yes, sir.
that, Mr. Hicks, we would request the 6. I mean, we can always be in a situation where we drill less, but it would avoid having to come back at a later date or with increased density.
If you are wanting up to 6, we would want an exhibit to show where the 6 would be.
Okay. I'll speak with my client about that, and perhaps we can leave the record open. I don't have a date in front of me, I apologize, Mr. Examiner. Let's see if I can find a calendar quickly. About June 10th.
June 10th,
Leave the
the
record open.
Friday?
In that, we'll either indicate that we're fine with what was presented, or we'll present an additional exhibit.
Leave the record open till June 10th for
Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
the additional exhibit. Are there further questions from commission staff? Seeing none? Anything further on this matter?
Nothing further.
That will conclude the hearing in case number 29363. Case number 29364. Application of WPX Energy Williston LLC for an order amending the field rules for the Hart Butte and/or Deepwater Creek Bay Bakken Pool, Dunn and McLean Counties, ND, so as to create and establish the following: an overlapping 1280-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 9 and 16, Township 149 North, Range 91 West, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on or near the section line between existing spacing units on said proposed overlapping 1280-acre spacing unit, and an overlapping 3840-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, and 11, Township 149 North, Range 91 West, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on or near the section line between existing spacing units on said proposed overlapping 3840-acre spacing unit, and or such other and further relief as appropriate. This case is continued to June. Case number 29313. Application of WPX Energy Williston LLC for an order amending the field rules for the Hart Butte and/or Deepwater Creek Bay Bakken Pool, Dunn and McLean Counties, ND, so as to create and establish the following: an overlapping 1280-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 9 and 16, Township 149 North, Range 91 West, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on or near the section line between existing spacing units on said proposed overlapping 1280-acre spacing unit,
I'll put you on the
and
speaker.
2 overlapping 3840-acre spacing units comprised of sections 9, 10, 15, 16, 21, and 22, Township 149 North, Range 92 West, and sections 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, and 11, Township 149 North, Range 91 West, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on or near the section line between existing spacing units on each proposed overlapping 3840-acre spacing unit, and or such other and further relief as appropriate. This case is continued to June. Case number 29314. Application of WPX Energy Williston LLC for an order extending the field boundaries and amending the field rules for the Hart Butte and/or Twin Buttes Bakken Pool so as to create and establish a 1920-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 1 and 2, Township 147 North, Range 92 West, and Section 6, Township 147 North, Range 91 West, Dunn County, ND, authorizing the drilling of a total not to exceed 8 wells, said spacing unit, and such additional relief as the commission deems appropriate. This case is continued to June. Case number 29365, application of Bowline Energy LLC for an order amending the field rules for the Buffalo Wallow and/or Bully Bakken Pool, McKenzie County, ND, so as to create and establish an overlapping 2560-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 4, 5, 8, and 9, Township 148 North, Range 100 West, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on or near the section line between the existing spacing units of said proposed overlapping 2560-acre spacing unit, and such other further relief. This case is continued to June. Case number 29366, application of Enerplus Resources Corp. for an order amending the field rules for the Eagle Nest Bakken Pool so to create and establish 2 overlapping 2560-acre spacing units comprised of sections 2, 3, 10, and 11, and sections 3, 4, 9, and 10, Township 148 North, Range 95 West, Dunn County, ND, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on or near the section line between the existing spacing units of each proposed overlapping 2560-acre spacing unit, and or such other relief. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, North Dakota, and I'm appearing in case 29366 on behalf of Enerplus Resources USA Corp. We intend to call 3 witnesses. Mr. Blake Brown will be offering some land testimony. Mr. Topher Lewis will be offering some geologic testimony. And Mr. Julian Hornack will be offering some engineering testimony. All 3 witnesses will be appearing by telephone, and they are on the phone right now. Oh, sorry about that.
Mr.
Busy calling.
Mr. Brown, are you on the line?
I'm so sorry.
I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm, under the penalties of perjury, that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Blake, state your name for the record, please.
My name is Blake Brown,
And Blake, by whom are you employed?
Interplus Resources.
In what capacity?
I'm the senior regional landman.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously?
I have.
Had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
They were.
For the further testimony, this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Blake, let's go to the packet of exhibits. Let's skip the cover page, table of contents, go to Exhibit L1. Tell me what L1 is.
Exhibit L1 is an area reference map showing the general area of the two proposed 2560 acre overlapping spacing units.
And Exhibit L2.
Exhibit L2 is an operation overview map, and we'll start with the easternmost well consisting of sections 2, 3, 10, and 11. That proposed well is the Katmai well, and the underlying unit working interests are in dark gray at the top, and the estimated working interest for the overlapping spacing unit is in the red and yellow box, the bottom right. Interplus's estimated working interest for this particular well is 95.97%. Moving on to the Jade well, which would consist of sections 3, 4, 9, and 10. Again, the underlying unit working interests are in dark gray at the top, and the estimated working interest for the overlapping spacing unit for Interplus is 59.37 in the bottom left-hand corner there.
L3.
L3 is just a boiled-down ownership map showing the two proposed overlapping spacing units and the proposed well. Again, the Katmai well consists of sections 2, 3, 10, and 11, and our estimated working interest in that well is 95.97%. The Jade well consists of sections 3, 4, 9, and 10, and our estimated working interest in that well would be 59.37%.
No further questions of this witness.
Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none?
Blake, this is Bruce Hicks. Looking at the interest, only 26% in the west, 2560 in, let's see. Tell me again the breakdown on the 2560s. Where do you have that?
Yeah, the 2560 is on both L2 and L3, but L3 is probably a better place to find that. So it's in, the proposed working interest is in the boxes below the proposed spacing unit. So they're in red outline boxes with yellow underlying unit. Now, the reason that working interest looks so low in sections 4 and 9 there is because of a large amount of unleased federal mineral interest in both sections 4, but mostly in section 9. This kind of borders the reservation boundary and then abuts that large federal unleased acreage that's in this area.
Okay, and do you identify the federal acreage anywhere on your exhibits?
We have not identified the federal acreage anywhere on the exhibits. We can certainly follow up and show that. We do have an image overview, a scan that we can provide to you guys.
Okay, we would like that. When do you expect it to come up for lease?
Well, it's been nominated for well over 10 years. We're hoping it comes up for lease soon. From my understanding, the BLM is going through an extensive assessment before they open that for public bid. We've heard rumors that it's coming soon, but I don't know for sure exactly when that will be open for bid.
So is it, right now we have 4 and 9 sitting there without a well on it, and what you're wanting to do is overlap that with the 2560. Would you drill the lease line well at the same time that you develop 4 and 9?
So we would develop a portion of 4 and 9 we would develop what would be the easternmost portion of 409 that's on the reservation, because we could not penetrate on these federal minerals by doing that. All of the reservation lands are leased, so we could penetrate those and justify the unit, and then we would be ready and proactive once that unleased federal mineral position is leased. Then we can further develop the unit. So our plan would be to drill 2 or 3 unit wells and the lease line well at the same time. I believe it'd be 2 unit wells, but I can have our geology, Topher Lewis, our geo testimony. He can confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from commission staff? Seeing none. Mr. Lewis, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Topher, state your name for the record, please.
My name is Russell Lewis, but I go by Topher Lewis.
And by whom are you employed?
Enterplus Resources USA.
What capacity?
I'm the geology lead for the Williston.
And that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously and had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
Yes, I have, and yes, they were.
Offer the further testimony, this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Topher, let's go to the next exhibit in the packet, G1.
G1 is a local structure map and reference map. The contours in the background are on the Upper Bakken Shale at 10-foot interval. And in addition to the contours, you can see our acreage position and our spacing units. And then in blue, we have one of the proposed 2560 overlapping spacing units that pertains to the Katmai lease line. And then in red, the other 2560 overlapping spacing unit that pertains to the Jade lease line. And then in addition to that, further to the west, the green star, which is the Deep Creek 1, which is the reference well that we're using for the area.
Okay, G2.
G2 is the local offset reference well. Again, it's the Deep Creek 1. The log tracks that we have on the left is gamma ray, then resistivity, porosity, and then bulk density. And then in green, we kind of highlight what we have for the middle Bakken target, which is about 40 feet. And then further down in purple, we have what we highlight for the Three Forks target, which is in purple.
No further questions?
Are there any questions from commission staff?
Topher, what is the target for each of the wells?
So the way it stands right now is the Jade is we have planned as a Three Forks. So that would be the lease line between sections 3, 4, 9, and 10. And then for the Katmai, which would be between sections 2, 3, 10, and 11, we're using that as a middle Bakken.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll be showing economics for both.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none. Julian Hornack, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Julian, state your name for the record, please.
Julian Hornack,
And Julian, by whom are you employed?
Enterplus Resources,
What capacity?
as a reservoir engineer.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously and had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
I have.
Offer the further testimony of this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Julian, let's go to E1. Please tell us what that exhibit is and then briefly discuss what's contained upon it.
E1 is a representation of a generic wellbore schematic of what we're planning to drill these wells at.
Okay, and how many frac stages are you anticipating?
between 35 and 40.
Okay. And then let's go on to Exhibit E. I guess it's Exhibit RE1. Tell us what that is.
RE1 is an exhibit of the Three Forks Reservoir parameters, and with a thickness of 40 feet and a porosity of 7.9%, showing, and permeability of 0.1 millidorses and a water saturation of 35% in this area, and a formation volume factor of 1.4. We're estimating that there's roughly 29 million stock tank barrels in place, of which we estimate to be able to recover 7.2 million. In this particular case, this is pertaining to the Three Forks well in section 3, 4, 9, and 10, and there are no existing Three Forks at this moment, so there's no expected recovery from the existing wells. But in total, for those two sections, for those 4 sections, we're expecting 8 equivalent Three Forks wells to be draining the area at roughly 500 MBO per well.
All right, and then RE2.
And RE2 is the economic summary for the Three Forks well. So running at a flat oil price of $60 and a flat gas price of $3.60 for a 9,900 foot long lateral with an initial capital investment of $6.4 million. We're expecting to see a rate of return of 61.4% with a before tax payout of 1.4 years.
And let's go to RE3. And
RE3 would be the representation of the Bakken reservoir parameters. This would be for the Cadmi well on the eastern side for section 2, 3, 10, and 11. And with an estimated thickness of 40%, porosity of 6.7%, and water saturation of 28% for the Bakken reservoir, and the formation volume factor of 1.3, we're expecting there are roughly 29.5 million stock tank barrels in place, of which we estimate to be able to recover 7.4 million. And with an expected recovery from the existing wells of 3 million, there's remaining reserves of 4.3 million, which on a per well basis, we're expecting 14.5 equivalent Bakken wells to be draining those 4 sections, and the Cadmi well, lease line well, is estimated to recover 575,000 barrels of that.
Okay, and then RE4.
And RE4 is the Bakken economic summary, and very similar at an oil price of $60 flat and a gas price of $3.60 for a 9,900 foot long lateral, and an initial capital investment of $6.4 million with an EUR of 575,000 MBO or barrels of oil. We're expecting a rate of return of 90.67% with a before tax payout of 1.07 years.
Okay, and then the next exhibit will request to be marked as GC1. Is that a gas capture affidavit that the commission typically requires in these sorts of matters?
That is correct.
In your opinion, will the requested relief prevent waste, protect relative rights, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes.
No further questions, Mr. Examiner. We'd offer the exhibits. And I think there was a request for something additional, June 10th. I can't remember what the additional item was.
It was the unleased federal.
Oh, yes,
think,
right.
information,
Does that
but-
give you plenty of time, Blake, to get that information, June 10th?
Yes, we can have it by
Okay,
June 10th.
The
thank you.
record will remain open until June 10th for supplements, and the exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Julian, this is Bruce Hicks. Looking at your exhibit RE1, the Three Forks reserves, you're showing 7.3 million primary oil recovery out of 8 equivalent wells, but you have an estimated recovery per well of 500,000, so that would be a total of 4 million. Is the same?
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But what's correct?
So we're estimating our EUR per well to be 500 million. We do believe that we can get to the 7.3 million, but some of the Bakken wells that will be going into those units will be recovering some of the 7.3 million as well in this area. If we took the 8 equivalent Three Forks wells and divided, we would be showing 1 million barrels per well. And to be honest, I don't want to show 1 million barrels recovery per well, as I believe that some of those, or a lot of those barrels will also come out from the Bakken well.
Okay. And then when I look at Exhibit L2 showing the wells that are going to be drilled, you're alternating on the west side between Three Forks and Middle Bakken. And then when you have your lease line well, you're drilling 3 Middle Bakkens in a row, just like you are around the parent well in 3 and 10. And then you continue that on to the east. Is the Middle Bakken getting better as you go east, or is the Three Forks getting worse?
I can speak to that.
Thank you.
This is Topher. When you look at our pattern, when we have an undrilled unit, we feel that the wine rack pattern between Middle Bakken and Three Forks alternating is the best. When you get to units where you have a longer producing well, we find that offsetting with a Bakken is better than offsetting with a Three Forks due to drainage. So when you look at the eastern part of those units, if you look at Exhibit L2, you'll see that the Emerald is a Middle Bakken. So we offset those with Middle Bakkens on each side. And sometimes that creates a little bit of a pattern problem. So if you look at the Emerald to the Zion, which is the well in the east, we just in general see better production out of, all things equal, better production out of Middle Bakken than Three Forks wells. That's just historically as a company what we've identified. So when we go in and we're infilling units that have existing wells, we will not go to just a straight alternating pattern. We will try to offset Middle Bakken with Middle Bakken. So it creates a little bit of the spacing isn't always perfect as far as how we alternate once you have existing wells. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, anything further on this matter, Mr. Bender?
Nothing further.
That will conclude the hearing in case number 29366. The time is 10:13. Why don't we go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break? we are back on the record. Next up is case number 29367, application of Slauson Exploration Co., Inc. for an order amending the field rules for the Big Bend Bakken Pool so as to create and establish a 160-acre spacing unit comprised of the southern half of the southeast quarter of Section 21 and the northern half of the northeast quarter of Section 28, Township 152 North, Range 92 West, in Mountrail County, North Dakota, for additional completion of operations in the Fox 2-28H well, and such other and further relief as appropriate. This case is continued to June. Case number 29368, application of Continental Resources, Inc. for an order amending the field rules for the West Kappa Bakken Pool, Williams County, ND, as follows. Authorizing the drilling, completing, and producing of a well with a lateral to be located approximately 350 feet from the west line of an existing 1280-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 28 and 33, Township 155 North, Range 96 West, and authorizing the drilling, completing, and producing of a well with a lateral to be located approximately 450 feet from the east line of an existing 1280-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 29 and 32, Township 155 North, Range 96 West, both as exceptions to the provisions of sections 43-02-03-18 of the NDAC and such other and further relief. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, North Dakota. And I'm appearing in case 29368 on behalf of Continental Resources, Inc. We intend to call 3 witnesses in this matter. The first witness will be in the area of land, Mr. Matt McMurray. The second witness will be a geologic witness, Ms. Robin Novosad. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, Novosad. And then our final witness will be an engineering witness, Mr. Chase Haddocken. And Robin, if I mispronounced your name, we'll get it correct when we call you as a witness.
All right, so Mr. McMurray was your first witness?
Yes, Matt McMurray.
Mr. McMurray, are you on the line?
I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Matt, state your name for the record, please.
Matthew McMurray,
And by whom are you employed?
Continental Resources, Inc.,
In what capacity?
the senior landman.
And that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously?
I have.
Had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
They have.
Offer the further testimony as witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Matt, let's go to Exhibit L1 in the packet. Tell us what L1 is.
Exhibit L1 is a general locator map with the existing field outlines in blue and the 2 spacing units for which the proposed exception locations are there outlined in red shaded in yellow.
Okay, and then let's go to Exhibit L2. Tell us what that is.
Exhibit L2 is an existing 1,280-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 28 and 33, 155 North, 96 West, for which Continental is proposing an exception location well, along with a working interest ownership summary for that existing spacing unit.
Okay, and Exhibit L3.
Exhibit L3 is an existing 1,280-acre spacing unit for which Continental is proposing to drill an exception location well, comprised of sections 29 and 32, 155 North, 96 West, along with a working interest ownership summary for that existing 1280.
And it's my understanding that you have a letter of support for this request from XTO Energy in the form of it's a support letter and it's addressed to the commission, is that correct?
That's correct.
No further questions of the land witness.
Are there any questions from commission staff?
Matt, this is Bruce Hicks. The letter of support, does it indicate that Continental would be operator of the well?
I believe it does. Yes, Mr. Hicks.
Okay, and is Continental operator of both spacing units currently?
No, XTO has drilled the parent wells in both these spacing units.
And is it your intention to take over production and operation of those 2 wells?
Mr. Hicks, are you referring to the existing wells, existing
Yes.
producers?
Yes.
Yes, sir, it is, and I believe there's paperwork with the NDIC currently pending in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none. Your next witness, sorry, I will probably mispronounce your name here. It was Ms. Novosad?
That's how I pronounce it.
Do you, lost my paper here. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Robin, would you state your full name and see how we did in your pronunciation?
Robin Novosad.
Oh, okay, great. I guess we were close. Robin, can you, I guess you've stated your name for the record. Can you spell your last name?
N-O-V as in Victor, O-S-A-D as in dog.
And can you tell us what your current position is at Continental Resources?
Senior Operations Geologist.
And in that position, have you testified before the commission previously?
No, I have not.
What I'd like you to do, Robin, is briefly highlight for us your educational background and work experience. Excuse me.
I graduated Texas A&M in 2010 with my Bachelor of Science in Geology. I've been working in the oil and gas industry for over 10 years now, and at Continental Resources for 8.5 years.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
As an operations geologist.
Okay. And in preparation for today's hearing, have you made a thorough study and review of all the relevant geologic matters concerning this request?
Yes, I have.
And have you prepared or had prepared under your control and supervision some exhibits you intend to sponsor?
Yes.
For the further testimony, this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Thank you. Robin, let's go to the next exhibit in the packet. I believe, let me get there, it is marked as Exhibit G1. What I'd like you to do is identify G1 and then briefly discuss what's contained upon it.
G1 is the Upper Bakken structure map with contour interval of 50 feet. This is for the location exception of a 1280 acre spacing unit. Our units are highlighted in yellow and outlined in red. The type log well is the Matson 1-20.
Okay, and G2.
G2 is the type well, the Matson 120. It is 50 feet above the Bakken to 50 feet into the Bird Bear with the petrophysical data below for the Middle Bakken flow zone unit.
No further questions.
Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none. I apologize, I missed the last name of your witness. I think I was focused on the second.
Haddican, H-A-D-D-I-C-A-N.
Mr. Haddican, do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Chase, state your full name for the record, please.
Chase Haddican,
And Chase, by whom are you employed?
Continental Resources,
In what capacity?
Reservoir Engineer.
And have you testified before the commission previously?
Nope.
I'd like you to briefly highlight for us your educational background and work experience.
I graduated from Oklahoma State University in 2017 with a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering. Directly after graduation, went to work for Continental Resources. I've been working for Continental for 4.5 years in our outside operated group, as well as our business development group, and just recently moved to our resource development group, but mostly working as a reservoir engineer in all those groups.
In preparation for today's hearing, excuse me, have you made a thorough study and review of all the relevant engineering matters concerning Continental's request?
I have.
And have you prepared or had prepared under your control and supervision some exhibits you intend to sponsor?
Yes.
For the further testimony, this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Chase, let's go to Exhibit E1. I'd like you to identify E1 and then briefly discuss what's contained upon it.
Exhibit E1 is a directional plot for the two planned exception location wells on their respective 1280s.
The first exception location well is located approximately 450 feet from east line on the existing 1280 comprised of section 29 of 155 north 96 west and section 32 of 155 north 96 west. The second exception location well will not mirror that and is located approximately 350 feet from west line on an existing 1280 comprised of section 28 of 155 north 96 west and section 33 of 155 north 96 west. The main point of this exhibit is to outline the existing development in those sections with the green solid lines and solid pink lines, representing existing Middle Bakken and Three Forks wells respectively. The dashed green lines indicate the proposed Middle Bakken exception location wells.
Can you tell us why the wells, the exception location wells, do not identically mirror one another, that one is closer to the center section line of the two 1280s than the other?
Well, as you can see in section 29 and 32, the existing Three Forks well is in a different location as the westernmost Middle Bakken well in section 28 and section 33. So in order to keep our optimal development between those two wells, that's why we don't have mirrored development with these two proposed exception location wells.
So the purpose of the exception location request initially is because the setbacks and the corridor that you would typically have when you combine two 1280s into a 2560 doesn't work very well for your pattern development, nor does having mirror exceptions. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go on then to E2. Can you tell me what E2 is?
E2 is a schematic of our typical 2-mile Middle Bakken well. We are showing a TD of 21,000 feet MD with a 7-inch casing point at 11,000 feet MD, which puts our lateral length at roughly 10,000 feet. The lateral will be cemented and completed with 45 plug-and-perf stages paired with hydraulic fracturing operations.
Okay, and then E3?
3 outlines the reserves and economics for an individual 2-mile Middle Bakken well. Starting with the reserves, we are expecting an oil IP of 990 barrels of oil per day, an oil EUR of 429 MBO, gas EUR of 1564 MMCF, and a BOE EUR of 690 MBOE. And the expected EUR GUR is 3646 SCF per barrel. Moving on to the economics section, these economics were ran at a 60-3 price deck for oil and gas, with a total estimated gross drilling and completion cost of $6.726 million. The reserves mentioned above, we are expecting a total PV10 of $4.84 million per well, a rate of return of 87%, and an undiscounted payout of 1.5 years. Also shown below are the reservoir parameters broken out for the Middle Bakken, as Robin previously spoke to in Exhibit G2.
Okay, and Exhibit GM1 is a gas capture affidavit that the Commission typically requires in these types of hearings. Is that correct?
Yes.
In your opinion, will the requested relief prevent waste, protect relative rights, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes.
No further questions. Mr. Examiner, offer the exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from Commission staff?
Chase, on Exhibit E1, is your inner well distance the same in both spacing stand-up 1280s?
Yeah. Are you referring to the? Are you referring to the future wells?
Yeah, the infill development.
Yes.
And what is that?
800 feet between Middle Bakken wells.
And are both these spacing units going to be developed with alternating Middle Bakken and First Bench Three Forks?
They will be developed with Middle Bakken only development.
And so in sections 29 and 32, the Middle Bakken well that would be to the east of the current Three Forks well, how far away would that well be from that well?
I would have to check that, so I can't answer that with 100% certainty.
So I assume Continental has an idea because of the way they're making this application for the differences in the setbacks. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if I added 800 feet to 450 to get to that Three Forks well, would that be approximately where that well is located?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Chase, to justify the difference in the two, I think the commission would want your development plan showing the additional wells in the Middle Bakken that you plan to drill here. I know it's not part of the 12, or, well, I guess you're not asking for a 2560, but to justify the setback to the 1280, we would want you to show the full development.
We can supply that as a supplemental exhibit.
Okay. And then also on Exhibit E3, your gas-oil ratio, of course, is pretty high. Is this reflective of using a ESP for artificial lift?
Yes, it is. Or, sorry, we'll actually be using gas lift for these wells.
Okay, and how many years do you plan to leave it on gas lift? What's your parameters to go to rod?
2 or 3 years.
Okay, and then would it be your intention to go to rod lift?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the differences in production methods, I assume that you pass that on to your midstream operator.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, there. Oh, the letter. Oh, yes, so, we, first, yes, so June 10th again.
Yep.
The record will remain open till June 10th for additional supplements. I am also in receipt of a letter of opposition here. Are you aware of this from a Daniel Wayrosh? It's pretty short, just a note that he objects to the location of the proposed multi-well pad. I don't know if you wanted a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, give us till June 10th to respond to that as well. We may not, but if we have that opportunity. I've not had an opportunity to talk to my client about that, so if we could have until June 10th, that'd be appreciated.
Lawrence, when Continental submits the post-hearing exhibit with the well plans, maybe they could include where that surface location is for the two wells in question in this case.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
if we know. If not, we'll give you a tentative location.
Yeah, I assume he's going, I don't know what Mr. Wyrock's objection is based on. I assume somebody talked to him, but I don't know that. So if you could maybe have them address that.
Okay.
Thanks.
And was there anything further in this case?
Nothing further.
That will conclude the hearing in case number 29368. Moving on. Case number 29369, application of Continental Resources, Inc. for an order amending the field rules for the Dollar Joe Bakken Pool, Williams County, ND, as follows. Authorizing the drilling, completing, and producing of a well with the lateral to be located approximately 420 feet from the west line of an existing 1280-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 13 and 24, Township 155 North, Range 97 West, and authorizing the drilling, completing, and producing of a well with a lateral to be located approximately 360 feet from the east line of an existing 1280-acre spacing unit comprised of sections 14 and 23, Township 155 North, Range 97 West, both as exceptions to the provisions of Section 43-02-03-18 of the NDAC and such other and further relief. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, appearing this matter on behalf of Continental Resources, Inc. We'll have 3 witnesses, same 3 witnesses as we called in the previous matter.
All right, Mr. McMurray, are you on the line?
I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
On that, let's turn to the packet exhibits, and let's go to Exhibit L1. Tell us what L1 is.
L1 is a general locator map where the existing spacing units where Continental is proposing to drill exception location wells are outlined in red and shaded in yellow.
L2?
L2 is an existing 1,280 acre spacing unit comprised of sections 13 and 24, 155 north, 97 west, where Continental's proposing one exception location well, along with a working interest ownership summary for the spacing unit.
L3?
L3 is an existing 1,280 acre spacing unit plat comprised of sections 14 and 23, 155 north, 97 west, where Continental is proposing to drill one exception location well, along with a working interest ownership summary for that existing 1,280.
No further questions.
Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Ms. Navasad, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Robin, G1?
This is the exhibit that shows the Upper Bakken structure map with contour interval of 50 feet. This is for the location exception for a 1,280 acre spacing unit. The units in question are highlighted in yellow with a red outline, and our type log is the Madsen 1-20, which is the red star.
G2?
G2 is the Madsen 120 type well that shows 50 feet into the Bakken with 50 feet into the Bird Bear, which shows the Middle Bakken flow zone unit, and below also has the petrophysical parameters.
No further questions of the geologic witness.
Any questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Mr. Haddocken, are you on the line?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Chase, E1?
Exhibit E1 is a directional plot for the two planned exception location wells on their respective 1280s. The first exception location well is located approximately 360 foot from east line on the existing 1280, comprised of section 14 of 155 north, 97 west, and section 23 of 155 north, 97 west. Second exception location well will not mirror the first and is located approximately 420 feet from west line on an existing 1280 comprised of section 13 of 155 north, 97 west, and section 24 of 155 north, 97 west. The main point of this exhibit is to outline the existing development in those sections with the solid green lines and solid pink lines representing existing Middle Bakken and Three Forks wells respectively. The dashed green lines indicate the proposed Middle Bakken exception location wells.
Can you briefly describe, as you did in the previous case, why it's necessary to position the wells where you have them on your Exhibit E1 rather than having mere exception locations?
So as you can see in section 14 and section 23, the existing Middle Bakken well is not placed directly in the same location as the existing Middle Bakken well in section 13 and section 24. So in order to maintain our optimal development between those two wells, we have to have non-mirrored development for these exception location wells.
Okay, and then let's go to E2.
Exhibit E2 is a schematic of our typical 2-mile Middle Bakken well. We're showing a TD of 21,000 feet MD with a 7-inch casing point at 11,000 MD, which puts our lateral length at 10,000 feet. The lateral will be cemented and completed with a 45 plug-in per stage stages paired with a hydraulic fracturing operation.
And E3.
E3 outlines the reserves and economics for an individual 2-mile Middle Bakken well. Starting with the reserves, we are expecting an oil IP of roughly 990 barrels of oil per day, an oil EUR of 429 MBO, a gas EUR of 1564 MMCF, and a BOE EUR of 690 MBOE. The expected EUR GOR is roughly 3646 SCF per barrel. Moving on to the economics. These economics are ran at a 60-3 price deck for oil and gas, with a total estimated gross drilling and completion cost of $6.726 million. The 60-3 pricing and the reserves mentioned above, we're expecting a total PV10 of $4.84 million per well, a rate of return of 87% per well, and an undiscounted payout of 1.5 years per well. Also shown are reservoir parameters. I would like to point out the reservoir parameters in Exhibit E3 should match the reservoir parameters of Exhibit G2 that Robin previously spoke to.
And Exhibit GM1, is that a gas capture affidavit that the commission typically requires in these sorts of matters?
Yes.
In your opinion, will the requested relief prevent waste, protect relative rights, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes.
No further questions. Call for the exhibits.
Exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Chase, on your exhibit E1, what is your interwell distance in these spacing units for the infill development?
800 feet.
And could you submit a post-hearing exhibit depicting the full development of those 21280s?
Yes.
And if the well is proposed to be at 420 feet or 360 feet, what kind of tolerance does Continental have for drilling horizontal, 2-mile horizontal wells? I guess to rephrase the question, if the setback was 420 feet, where would Continental locate the well?
50 feet.
So you have a 50-foot tolerance?
Yes.
And I should ask that in the last case, but I assume that's the same for the previous case?
Yes.
And likewise, in the previous case, when you submit those development plans for the 1280s, please include the surface locations for the wells.
Noted. Will do.
And then I assume these 2 wells will be drilled at approximately the same time and completed at approximately the same time?
Yes, sir.
And likewise, I should ask that question in the previous case. Is that the case in the previous case?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Chance, when you were discussing your exhibit E3, you referenced that the reservoir parameters on E3 should be the same as what's on G2. They're not the same, so were you indicating that the parameters on E3 were just in error and refer to G2 for those values?
Yes, sir. So on E3, the reservoir parameters should match that of G2, the Matson 1-20 well.
Okay, so we'll just scratch the values on E3 and use the values from G2.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chase, I'm looking at Exhibit E1. You show the 2 existing wells. Does Continental operate both of those wells?
No.
Are they XTO?
Yes.
Okay, and will Continental be taking over operatorship of those 2 wells?
This is Matt McMurray, the land witness, and yes, sir. Those wells are on that same list. I think it's a Form 15 transfer of operator, as the previous wells from the previous case that are currently pending with the NDIC.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, there was a request for supplement. Is June 10th looking good again?
That looks good, and I would, since Mr. Bohr delved into a little bit in case 29368, I'd like to also indicate that we're going to be requesting an expedited order in that case. We're looking at spudding that well in August of 2022. So the specific request will come later, but I did want to give the commission a heads up on that.
Okay. The record here will remain open until June 10th as well for supplements. Is there anything further in this case?
Nothing further.
That will conclude the hearing in case number 29369. Moving on. Case number 29370. Application of Continental Resources, Inc. for an order amending the field rules for the St. Demetrius and/or Bull Snake Bakken Pool, Billings County, ND, so as to create and establish the following: an overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit comprised of Section 32, Township 142 North, Range 99 West, and Sections 5 and 8, Township 141 North, Range 99 West, authorizing the drilling of a total not to exceed 4 wells on said proposed overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit, and 4 overlapping 3840 acre spacing units comprised of Sections 33 and 34, Township 142 North, Range 99 West, and Sections 3, 4, 9, and 10, Township 141 North, Range 99 West, Sections 34 and 35, Township 142 North, Range 99 West, and Sections 2, 3, 10, and 11, Township 141 North, Range 99 West, Sections 35 and 36, Township 142 North, Range 99 West, and Sections 1, 2, 11, and 12, Township 141 North, Range 99 West, Section 31, Township 142 North, Range 98 West, Section 36, Township 142 North, Range 99 West, Sections 1 and 12, Township 141 North, Range 99 West, and Sections 6 and 7, Township 141 North, Range 98 West, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on or near the section line between existing spacing units on each proposed overlapping 3840 acre spacing unit and or such further relief. This case is continued to June. Case number 29371, application of Continental Resources, Inc. for an order amending order number 30229 of the Commission for the Crazy Man Creek Bakken Pool, Williams County, ND, so as to dissolve an overlapping 2560 acre spacing unit comprised of Sections 1, 2, 11, and 12, Township 153 North, Range 100 West, which authorized the drilling of 1 lease line horizontal well on a north-south orientation on said overlapping 2560 acre spacing unit, and such further and additional relief. This case is dismissed. Case number 29372, application of Continental Resources, Inc. for an order amending order number 29030 of the Commission for the Willow Creek Bakken Pool, Williams County, ND, so as to dissolve an overlapping 2560 acre spacing unit comprised of Sections 13, 14, 23, and 24, Township 153 North, Range 100 West, which authorized the drilling of 1 lease line horizontal well on a north-south orientation on said overlapping 2560 acre spacing unit, and such further and additional relief. This case is dismissed. Case number 29373, application of Continental Resources, Inc. for an order amending order number 24981 of the Commission for the Viking Bakken Pool, Burke County, ND, so as to dissolve an overlapping 2560 acre spacing unit comprised of Sections 1, 2, 11, and 12, Township 160 North, Range 94 West, which authorized the drilling of 1 lease line horizontal well on a north-south orientation on said overlapping 2560 acre spacing unit, and such further and additional relief. This case is dismissed. Case number 29310, application of Crescent Point Energy U.S. Corp. for an order amending the field rules for the Blue Ridge and/or Winter Bakken Pool, Williams County, ND, so as to create and establish 4 overlapping 1920 acre spacing units comprised of Sections 29 and 32, Township 159 North, Range 100 West, and Section 5, Township 158 North, Range 100 West, Sections 30 and 31, Township 159 North, Range 100 West, and Section 6, Township 158 North, Range 100 West, Sections 7, 18, and 19, Township 158 North, Range 100 West, and sections 8, 17, and 20, Township 158 North, Range 100 West, authorizing the drilling of a total not to exceed 3 wells on each proposed overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit and/or such further relief. This case is continued to June. Case number 29312, application of Hunt Oil Co. for an order amending the field rules for the Bakken Pool, Montreal County, ND, to create and establish an overlapping 1280 acre spacing unit comprised of sections 8 and 17, Township 156 North, Range 90 West, authorizing the drilling, completing, and producing of a total not to exceed 7 wells on said proposed overlapping 1280 acre spacing unit and such other relief as appropriate. This case is dismissed. Case number 29374, application of Continental Resources, Inc. for an order suspending and, after hearing, revoking a permit issued to Oasis Petroleum North America, LLC for the Achilles 5301 12-13 3BX well with a surface location in the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 13, Township 153 North, Range 101 West, McKenzie County, ND, and for such other relief as appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, appearing in this matter, case 29374, on behalf of Continental Resources, Inc.
And Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Oasis Petroleum North America, LLC.
You may continue, Mr. Bender, or is,
Pardon me?
or I suppose, is it your case?
Yeah, it is. Mr. Examiner, before we call the two witnesses we have planned on calling, maybe a brief introduction would be appropriate. As you indicated, this matter is before the Commission as a result of an application of Continental Resources, Inc. to suspend and, after hearing, revoke a permit that was issued to Oasis Petroleum North American, LLC. Since the filing of this application, the application for suspension was not granted, so Oasis rightfully moved forward and started drilling the well. The well, as I understand it, is now drilled. It's not completed. At the conclusion of the testimony that's going to be presented, Continental Resources plans on withdrawing its request to revoke the permit, but we think it's important that we still go forward with the presentation that we have planned to demonstrate to the Commission that there's a problem right now with respect to issuing permits and having a 3-day delay period when in the interim, after the filing of that application, there is a change made by the applicant to change the location or change the spacing unit. And that's going to be the focus of our presentation today. We plan on calling two witnesses. Mr. T.J. Botchlet will be offering some land testimony, and Mr. Alex Cote will be offering some engineering testimony.
Mr. Botchlet, can you hear me?
Before you start, Lawrence, I should mention that I believe this is a case where we had a certain permit issued for Oasis, and then they submitted a modification to change the spacing unit and the location of the well.
That's correct.
And I've talked to Todd Holwager, our permit manager, and I've instructed him to make sure that we list these on the daily activity report so bottom hole locations are shown on it. It's also the Commission's stance that the bottom hole location is not confidential on a horizontal well. And there is going to be some, we will be addressing that in the future. I don't know if that helps, but we realize the issue that is presented when spacing units change and operators don't know what's been submitted.
And I think what you said, Mr. Hicks, is appropriate, and I appreciate that. I don't know if it goes far enough, though, because you didn't indicate if someone requests through a sundry notice to change the location and change the spacing unit, will that 3-day waiting period come back into place? Because that's what happened here. We ultimately were made aware of it, but with no 3-day waiting period, and I'm not faulting Oasis. Oasis had an opportunity to change the location, change the spacing unit, and then go out and start drilling right away. We believe that if there had been a 3-day waiting period, Continental probably could have got on the phone, spoke with Oasis. There could have maybe been a change a little bit in the bottom hole locations, and we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. So if the commission is planning on heading down that path where that 3-day waiting period is in essence renewed because of a change in location or a change in the spacing unit, I think that's going to go a long way in solving our problem.
Okay, well, we certainly haven't implemented this yet, but it's in the works.
Okay, and I think given the fact that you understand the issue and have brought this up front, we can make our presentation relatively short.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Botchlet, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
TJ, state your name for the record.
TJ Botchlet,
And TJ, by whom are you employed?
by Continental Resources,
What capacity?
as a Northern Region Land Supervisor.
And in that capacity, you've testified before the commission previously?
Yes.
Had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
Yes, I have.
Offer the further testimony of this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
TJ, I'm going to direct your attention first to Exhibit Number 1, and given Mr. Hicks's introductory comments and our exchange back and forth, please keep that in mind, and perhaps you can keep your comments with respect to the exhibits you're going to talk about brief. Does that sound okay to you?
Yep, that'll work.
Okay, let's go to Exhibit 1. Tell us very briefly what that is.
Exhibit 1 is just a general locator map identifying 3 1,280-acre spacing units, the Foley Federal, the Achilles, and then in sections 14 and 23, the Montpelier. The spacing units highlighted in blue are Oasis, operated in the Montpelier, highlighted in yellow, is operated by Continental. The red outlines show the 1280 and then the 2560 that we're talking about today.
Okay, and Exhibit L2?
L2 is a land plat, and this is identifying the working interest between Continental and Oasis for each of the spacing units. So for sections 1 and 12, Continental has a 3% working interest and Oasis a 68% working interest. Sections 14 and 23, this is the one that Continental operates. We've got a 58% working interest. And then in 13 and 24, we don't actually own an interest in that, and Oasis owns 80%. We did a trade with Oasis back quite a few years ago that traded each other out of those. And then in the 2560, the last summary there, Continental owns 29% working interest and Oasis has a 40% interest. And then I just highlighted two where Continental owns 100% within those two tracks right there, highlighted in kind of a lighter color.
And I know you're going to get into this in a little bit more detail when you go through your timeline, but right now, 1 and 12 is a spacing unit, 13 and 24 is a spacing unit, is that correct?
Yes.
And 14 and 23 is a spacing unit, is that correct?
Yes.
And then also 13, 14, 23, and 24 are a 2560 acre spacing unit, is that correct?
That is correct.
And has that 2560 been pooled?
No, it has not.
Okay. Let's go on then to Exhibit L3, and keeping in mind what we're talking about here and the issue of a permit being issued to Oasis and then Oasis deciding to change the location and the spacing unit of that permit, why don't you walk through this timeline and explain how this timeline is important to the problem that Continental has encountered and what change Continental would like to see so that this sort of problem doesn't develop again.
Yeah, so we'll just start at the top here. In 2018, there was Order 28800 was approved for 2 wells on the section line, and that's still out there. And then in February 6th of 2019, this is where the permits were issued to Oasis for the Foley Federal wells. And this is the well specifically that is where the name was changed. So they applied for this permit in 2019. Then in January 6th of 2022, the permit was renewed. And that was still as a 1,280 acre spacing unit in sections 1 and 12 of 153-101. And then shortly after that, the name was changed to the Achilles 5301 12-13-3BX, but it was still, at that point when the name was changed, it was still sections 1 and 12 of 153-101.
So let me stop you, TJ, just for a moment. So
Sure.
through January 6th of 2022, no problem, the permits that were being applied for and the permits that were being issued to Oasis were for sections 1 and 12, and Continental Resources had no interest in section 1 and 12. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's right. So this was one well on a 4-well pad, and all 4 wells were going into sections 1 and 12.
Okay. All right, continue. I apologize for interrupting, but I thought it was important just to make it clear what we were talking about.
And then somewhere between January of 2022 and March of 2022, Oasis decided that those 4 wells going into sections 1 and 12 were too many wells for whatever spacing they were going to do and what they were trying to accomplish there. So instead of canceling one of those permits, they submitted this permit modification to basically move the bottom hole locations from sections 1 and 12 down to the 2560 in sections 13, 14, 23, and 24. So it was a completely different spacing unit. So I think right here on 3/3 of 2022, this is where we would have liked, where it should have hit the daily activity report, which we monitor every day and go through those reports and identify permits that we might want to protest or have a better conversation with Oasis about. This is where we would have saw it, was basically on 3/4, which we could have submitted our application to suspend their permit, and we would have had plenty of time to talk with Oasis about potentially changing their wellbore path. Instead, we didn't know about it. They went ahead and spud the well on March 12th. We found out about this on March 16th, 4 days after they'd already spud the wells when we received the well proposal. Then that gets routed through our teams internally, which you might say, well, there's a little bit of a delay in there. We receive over 1,000 well proposals every year, and we do have a pretty good process on how those get routed and approved internally through Continental. So this time frame is pretty much what we see consistently. So then it gets routed on March 17th internally to our teams. April 6th, we reach out to Oasis, asking them where they are in the lateral and what their plan is. And it took a couple days for them. They never really got back to us on where exactly they were in that lateral. And we believe they were still in the vertical portion of that lateral. And then on April 9th, we asked them if they could deviate their wellbore and move it over to change the orientation of their lateral, which would have allowed us to drill an additional well in our 1,280-acre spacing unit in sections 14 and 23.
And the engineering witness is going to go into that in a little bit further detail in terms of
That's right.
another well that could have been drilled. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct. However, Oasis at that time indicated they were too far in their lateral to move it, which is why we filed for the application to suspend their order, or to suspend their permit. And then on April 13th, we had to make an election in that well, since we were under our 30-day time frame to make that election and not be deemed non-consent. Pretty much the time frame.
Okay. And so, I mean, generally speaking, what Continental Resources is requesting is what you just laid out a few moments ago, and that's that if there is a change in the surface location or the bottom hole location or a spacing unit change, that the permit goes back onto the daily permit list, and that the 3-day waiting period applies. Is that basically the request?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
That's all the questions I have for TJ.
All right, any cross, Mr. Mann?
No questions.
Any questions from commission staff?
TJ, this is Bruce Hicks. Is it typical that Continental would receive a proposal letter after wells have spud, or do you typically get that prior?
We typically get that prior. It's not common to receive it after the fact. It does happen, but it's not common.
You indicated that you would want permit modifications such as this on the daily activity report and a chance for a 3-day wait period, or I guess a mandatory, if you will. What type of changes are you requesting? Is it when the spacing unit changes, or is it any permit modifications where the bottom hole location might change?
That's a good question. So I think you guys have out there like a permit modification matrix, and I think all of the permit modifications would go on that daily activity report. I mean, if they're having to move the wellbore, I think it's typical sundry. In the past, like a sundry would have been like, we're on the well, but we need to move it over a couple hundred feet, or we need to slide the surface location over 50 feet to drill the well. I don't think that's what we're asking about, but certainly bottom hole location changes that change spacing units would be one. I don't know exactly what all's covered under the permit modification when those are submitted.
We would have an issue putting all permit modifications on the daily activity report. We have numerous modifications that come in, plus it could be anything from casing size changes to depths to lateral changes. So I guess I would suggest, it sounds to me like if it was a spacing unit change, that probably would solve your issue that you're bringing up now.
I'm not so sure, Mr. Hicks, in this case. I mean, if it had been permitted initially as a 2560 and the well location would have been on the east side of the dividing section line, Continental Resources likely would not have had any problem with it because they would have been able to drill their additional well on their 1280. But so if it had been permitted that way and then there was a request to change it with a sundry notice to move the lateral to the other side and eliminate Continental's well, then there would be a problem. I know it's difficult. It's hard to say which should be on the 3-day waiting list and which should not, but just saying if it's just spacing unit change, I don't think gets it done necessarily. So we may have to throw bottom hole location in there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Lawrence, would it be if a change in a bottom hole location, so it's, in a 1280, you're probably pretty safe because you're not going to affect another spacing unit, but so is really the issue is if the bottom location changes that could affect another spacing unit or something like that?
Yeah, and I know that's kind of vague, but I mean, that's in essence what happened here, is the location had an impact on what Continental Resources is going to be able to do on their 1280 where they own 100% interest.
Okay, thank you.
One of the other issues that we may have is that a permit on a new pad, the pad might be constructed based upon the original spacing unit that it was permitted for, and later a modification might come in changing it to where somebody may object to it. And our rules say that you can't revoke a permit once operations have commenced. So if operations have already commenced by the surface location being prepared, we would have an issue with revoking it.
Suspend, you can't suspend
Suspending
once
it,
operations, but I understand. there's no perfect solution.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none? Next witness, Mr. Cote, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, sir.
Alex, state your full name for the record,
Alexander Cody,
and by whom are you employed?
Continental Resources,
In what capacity?
Northern Resource Development Engineer.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously and had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. Alex, before you start on these exhibits, I just want to let you know that I think we can go through these relatively quickly. I'm sure the commission staff and counsel for Oasis understands the issue. I know this is an attempt to kind of depict that, but keeping in mind that everyone probably understands, if you can move through this quickly, it'd be helpful. With that in mind, let's go to E1 and very briefly discuss what's contained on E1.
E1 is just a directional plot for the 1280s and existing development that was previously discussed by TJ. The dashed lines indicate the wells that were in discussion. The red line indicating the original permit that was issued in 2019 and renewed in 2022. The green dashed line in section 14 and 23 is our originally planned wellbore in the Middle Bakken, about 770 feet from that existing Three Forks well.
Okay, and E2?
E2 is the same directional well plot with the exception that this is the now permit modified well in March 3rd, showing it at 200 feet into section, off the section line in section 14 and 23.
And this...
What you'll notice is that our planned wellbore is no longer there.
Yeah, okay, that was the question I was going to ask. And then E3.
E3 is kind of a what-if scenario. Had we received that permit modification notice, it would have allowed us the opportunity to negotiate with Oasis in a manner that could have potentially led to us both being able to develop our desired wellbores.
So as a result of not being notified, not having an opportunity to discuss this matter with Oasis, one less well is likely to be drilled in section 14 and 23. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, sir, that is.
I have no further questions of Mr. Cody. We would offer our exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Any questions, Mr. Mann?
No questions.
Right. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Alex, the Oasis well that's been drilled, do you know what the target of that well is?
I would expect it to be a Middle Bakken, but I'm not completely certain.
If it was a Three Forks well, would that change Continental's opinion of what, if they could drill that well or their well or not?
No, sir, it would not.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff?
Alex, just looking at your Exhibit 2, it appears to me that, just from eyeballing this, that the two Three Forks wells that you have drilled in 14 and 23 have a Middle Bakken well between them, and it's not that much difference. If theirs was a Three Forks well, that possibly you could drill a well. Is there a minimum that you say, well, there's no longer a chance that I'm going to be able to drill due to the short interwell distance?
I would say that we don't want to be drilling wells between existing development and depletion out in this area that is closer than, 700 feet. I think that would be relatively tight.
And is one of the issues that you have an existing Three Forks well that has already produced a fair amount of oil and has drained that area?
And I would say it's more of a total liquids produced as more of that pressure support for the new development.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Anything further, Mr. Mann?
Nothing further
Mr.
here.
Bender?
No, Mr. Examiner.
All right, so that will conclude the hearing in case number 29374. Moving on. Case number 29319. Application of Continental Resources, Inc. for an order pursuant to North Dakota Century Code 380808.2, determine the reasonable actual cost for the drilling and operating of the following wells operated by Grayson Mills Operating LLC, all located in the Williams County, ND, and for such other relief as the commission deems appropriate. Jake 2-114H well, located in Lot 2 of Section 2, Township 153 North, Range 100 West. Jennifer 26-35 1H well, located in the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 23, Township 156 North, Range 100 West. And the Marcia 3-10 1H well, located in the Lot 1 of Section 3, Township 153 North, Range 100 West. And Larson 3-10 2H well, located in the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 15, Township 154 North, Range 100 West. This case is dismissed. And that will conclude the regularly scheduled docket.